In Perek Mem Gimel, which we studied earlier, the Alter Rebbe describes the two levels of Ahava, two levels of love, one higher than the other, and they are known as Ahava Rabbah and Ahavas Olam. Ahava Rabbah is the higher level of love, one that comes as a reward, a gift from above, only after a person has already achieved a satisfactory level of fear of God. And then there's Ahavas Olam, the lower level of love, and this comes through one's effort, through trying to understand and grasp godliness and make godliness tangible in his mind and heart. In chapter 44, Perek Mem Dalet, the Alter Rebbe says that there is a kind of love that incorporates the properties of both Ahava Rabbah and Ahavas Olam. It comes from above, and yet it depends on contemplation. And this, in this too, there are two levels. One is called Nafshi Ivisicha, the love which comes from the recognition that God is our true life. Nafshi, you are my soul, Ivisicha, and therefore I desire to get closer to you. Recognizing that God is our true life, that arouses the inborn love that every Jew has for God. The second level is called Bra De'ishtadel Basar Avui V'imei, as described in the Zohar, and that is the love of a child who loves his parents, his mother and father, more than himself. Nafshi Ivisicha, loving God because He is my life, means that I love God to the same degree that I love my life, which is a very high and intense love, but it does not include Mesiras Nefesh, because I am pursuing godliness. I want to get closer to God because He is my life. So I'm really pursuing the highest life and the highest truth for myself, but not against myself, not to the exclusion of myself. Whereas Bra De'ishtadel Basar Avui V'imei, the love of a child, of the son, to his parents, where he loves his parents more than himself, he will therefore do for his parents, even if it means losing his own life. In other words, doing for God and not for yourself. This too is a love that every Jew has by birth and as an inheritance from Moshe Rabbeinu and from Avraham Avinu. But here also, in order to reveal it, there has to be a certain amount of hisbonenus, a certain amount of contemplation and understanding. In the end, the Rebbe is going to conclude that although the level of Ahava Rabbah is a much higher level than Ahavas Olam, and even these two kinds of love that have both advantages, a little bit of Ahavas Olam and a little bit of Ahava Rabbah, in that it comes from above, but it takes contemplation to bring it out. Even so, there is a benefit and a virtue to the lower kind of love, to Ahavas Olam, that outweighs the greatness and the heights of the higher levels of love, as we will soon learn. Today's portion, the fourth day of Iyar, is in Perek Mem Dalet, in chapter 44. It's on page 126, about 5 lines from the top, at the period. The number at the bottom of the page is 236. The Rebbe had said here in this Perek that this love of the son who does for his parents, even when it means losing his own life, because he loves them more than he loves himself, and this is of Ahava that a Jew can have for God, where he does the mitzvah not for himself, not even for the benefit of gaining for himself the truth of the true life, which is godliness, but he does it only for God himself. This is something which, although it is a very high level, a person can habituate himself, can get into the habit of thinking this way and feeling this way, and it is not distant and impossible for him to achieve it. How does he do it? Beficha ubilvavcha. He does it by getting into the habit of verbalizing, referring to God as his Father, and speaking about God as his Father and so on, this arouses the feeling of the heart, because the koil, what we say, arouses the heart, and eventually it becomes second nature. Now, to continue on page 126. And although when the person gets into the habit of thinking of God as his Father, and doing for God beyond himself without any selfish motivation at all, it might appear to the person that it is false and imaginary, that he doesn't really feel that, he's only saying it and he's only acting that way, yet le yachush, it shouldn't disturb him, it shouldn't bother him. Although when something is false in the service of God, it is a serious issue, it's a serious problem, because the whole essence of godliness and holiness and Yiddishkeit, if it's anything, it's truth, and here there's a false note, yet the Rebbe says not to worry. Why not to worry? Since it is absolutely true, totally true, by itself, in other words, by nature of the neshama itself, it is absolutely true because of the inborn love that every Jew has for God. And as far as the neshama is concerned, it does have a totally selfless devotion to our Father in heaven. Rak shetei'eles yitziyase el hagilui is kedei leheviya lidei maise shehu esek haTorah v'hamitzvos. Only the purpose of bringing out this love and not allowing it to remain concealed, the purpose of bringing it out to the revealed state is in order that it should bring you to do Torah and mitzvahs shalei medu mekayim al yedei zeh, the Torah that he studies and the mitzvahs that he performs. As a result of this contemplation and a result of this feeling, kedei la'ases nachas ruach lefanav yizbarech kiben ha'eved es aviv, that when he does the mitzvahs, when he studies the Torah, he should do it in order to bring pleasure to God, like the son who serves his father to bring pleasure to his father. In other words, the Rebbe is saying here two things. First of all, not to worry that this attempt at serving God like a child who is devoted to his parents more than to himself, that this might be fake, it might be artificial, and it might be an imaginary thing. He might convince himself, but he knows that it isn't 100% true. The Rebbe says not to worry about it for two reasons. First of all, reason number one, because in the neshama it is true. In other words, that which is truest, the truest part of the Jew, which is his neshama, there it is true. And secondly, what is the whole purpose of this love? What is the whole purpose of arousing the love? What is the purpose of bringing out the love? Not for itself. It's not that love itself is the goal, and therefore we have to worry whether the love itself is genuine and sincere or lacking in sincerity. The purpose of the love is not for itself. The purpose of the love is in order to make the mitzvahs that we do rise and have life to it and be done for its proper sake. So it's to enhance the mitzvah, it's to serve the mitzvah that we have the love. And here, when the person makes this effort at arousing a love for God that goes beyond all selfish interests, the result is that when he does the mitzvah, he's doing it for the intention, or with the intention, of serving God alone. So in his intention, maybe not in the emotion, but in the intention, he is serving God with the intention of doing it only for God and not for himself at all. A selfless service. And since the whole purpose of the Ava is to bring about the enhancement of the mitzvah, and the enhancement of the mitzvah does result from this effort, therefore there's a second reason for not worrying and not being concerned with the fact that the love might not be 100% sincere, or this level of love. And the Rebbe needs both explanations, both reasons for not being concerned, because if it wasn't true to the neshama, then the fact that it leads to a good end would not justify it of itself. The fact that it enhances the mitzvah, if it wasn't true, if it was totally false, then it wouldn't be acceptable at all. But since, in essence, it is true, as far as the neshama goes, it is real and genuine. And on the other end of the spectrum, it produces the proper and desirable results concerning how he does mitzvahs. So since it's true at the top and it's true at the bottom, therefore he need not worry that in the emotion it may not be 100% sincere. Now, the problem remains that we learned earlier that when a person has the proper kavanah and knows how he's supposed to do the mitzvah, but he doesn't have the actual feeling, then the kavanah does not connect with the act, but remains distant and removed from it, so that the act does not have the wings that it needs in order to rise to its proper place in the holy spheres. So here also, if it's not a true emotion, it's only that the kavanah is proper, he knows the right way to be doing it, but he's not actually feeling it, then that doesn't connect to the act, because intention is removed and distant from the act, unless it's motivated by feeling and by enthusiasm, which connects it to the act. So here, that connection is missing. So the Alter Rebbe says, V'al zeh amru, and it's concerning such circumstances that the sages say that machshava tova, that a good thought or a good intention, HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa l'maisa, God connects it to the act. Not that God considers it as if there were an act. The act is there too. He does the mitzvahs. He studies the Torah. What do we need? Assistance from God. We need that God should connect the good intention, which in this case is the kavanah of the selfless service of God, that this kavanah should be connected to the act of the mitzvah when he actually serves God, because there is something missing in the emotion that would otherwise bring them together. So the Gemara tells us that in that case, God brings it together. Li yes gatfin leparcha kanal, so that there's love and fear that gives the mitzvah the ability to rise. Love and fear are the wings that give the mitzvah the ability to rise, and although the love and fear are not aroused properly, but God provides them when you have the proper intention and motivation and the proper action. And what is the pleasure that the person is bringing out, is providing for God when serving Him without any selfish motivation at all? He's doing it only for God's pleasure. What is this pleasure? So we have an analogy of the joy of a king, that he gets joy from his son, when the son returns to his father the king after being released from imprisonment, as we used the example earlier in Tanya. So just as the son is thrilled and has pleasure in returning and being reunited with his father, the same is true also that the father has pleasure in being reunited with his son. So when the person does the mitzvah with the thought of returning his neshama, of cleaving to God and getting closer to God, by giving his neshama back to God, by getting closer, this provides for God pleasure. And the selflessness is that he's not doing it for the pleasure that he gets from being closer to God. He's doing it from the pleasure that God gets when the neshama, which is a part of God, is returned to him. Or an even higher level of nachas that we give to God, which is even less selfish. Or the motivation is that we're doing the mitzvah in order to create for God a dwelling, a dira b'tachteinim, as we learned earlier, and this is an even more selfless motivation because it doesn't involve him at all. In the first motivation, the first nachas that we that we give God is in returning our neshama to Him through becoming closer to Him, as in the love of nafshi ivisicha. Here, although I'm doing it for God, but it also involves me to some degree. Whereas in the motivation of doing a mitzvah in order that God should have a dira b'tachtenim, this doesn't involve me in any personal way at all. Now we said before that the love which is that of a son who is devoted to his parents more than to himself, that this is not something impossible to achieve, but that through habit it can be achieved. Now the Rebbe says that the second love, the love of nafshi ivisicha, this too is not unattainable, but this too can be revealed and can be attained. And although the truth is that this is a lower level love, so if the higher level, the more selfless and mesiras nefesh love of loving God more than he loves himself, if that's not out of reach, then it should go without saying that the lower level of love, nafshi ivisicha, is certainly not beyond reach. So the Rebbe Shlita explains that the love of a son to the father is a totally spiritual thing. It's an impulse of the soul, of the heart, and therefore, by thinking and getting into the habit in the mind and in the heart to think of God and to feel towards God as a son feels towards a parent, that is certainly going to be successful because there's no obstacle to it. It merely is a matter of clarification, of seeing clearly and recognizing clearly that God is our Father. Whereas in the lower level love, nafshi ivisicha, where the person serves God because he senses that God is his life, here there's an obstacle. The obstacle is the body, because the body senses that something else is its life. So there's a resistance there. It's much easier to serve God on a spiritual, disembodied level, to feel like a child to God and to love Him as a child loves his father, because this takes no battle, there's no struggle there, there's no resistance there. But to convince your body that your physical life, your very existence, comes from God and He is your true life, this takes a greater effort. And so the Rebbe says, the Alter Rebbe says that even the second kind of love, where you have to bring godliness down into the physical, to feel godliness even on the physical level, this too can be attained through habit. Let's learn it again. Also the level of love that is called nafshi visicha, also this love is korev hadover me'ed, it is very close to you, lahetziya me'hahelem el hagilui, to bring it out from its concealment to a state of revealed love, because it exists as an inheritance, as we said before. Both loves are there in the neshama as an inheritance. The question is only to reveal it. So the Alter Rebbe says that revealing it is not an unattainable thing, but it can be done al yedei hahergul tamid b'piv v'libei shavin, through the constant habit of mouth and heart when they work together, that the heart is aroused by what the mouth speaks. So again, getting into the habit of speaking of God as our true life, as our true nefesh, and speaking of God as our Father, and referring to God as our Father in heaven, that helps bring out the love that every Jew has, either on the level of the son or on the level of nafshi v'sicha. But if he finds that he can't reveal this love in the revealed part of the heart, afal pikein, in spite of that, yochal lasek b'teira mitzvahs lishmon, it still will enable him. This level of love, of nafshi ivisicha, even if he can't reveal it in the heart, but it can still serve him in his Torah and mitzvahs, that his mitzvahs should be lishma, for their own sake, for the right purpose. How? Al yedei tziyur inyan ahavazu b'machshava shebemeichei, by imagining and picturing this love in his thought, in his mind, u'machshava teiva kadosh baruch hu mitzarfa. And in this case also, it will be a good thought which God will then connect to the act of the mitzvah. And here again we see that on the higher level love, the love of the son who loves his parents more than himself, the Alter Rebbe doesn't say if he can't arouse it, because there's no reason that he shouldn't be able to. The question is only how sincere it is. Since it is a very high love, it might be that it isn't a sincere one. It doesn't permeate. It's not thorough in the person, precisely because it is high. But also because it's high, it has no interference from the body. And therefore there's no doubt that if he gets into the habit, it will become his second nature and he will do it. Whereas on the lower level love, because it has to affect his body, it is possible that he won't be able to bring it out at all. Not that it won't be 100% sincere. The sincerity is less of an issue, because here it's more likely that it would be sincere, because it's not beyond reach. It's very tangible, so it will be sincere. But because the body objects and the body obstructs it, it is possible that as much as he tries, he can't bring it out into the revealed part of the heart. So the Alter Rebbe says, even so, in picturing it and having it in the mind, having a picture of it in your mind, the feeling or the attitude of nafshi ivisicha, that you are my soul and therefore I desire you, that also enhances the mitzvah and gives the mitzvah proper kavanah, and God makes the connection and fills in the blank space that is missing between the kavanah and the act. In the Hayom Yom of today, the 4th of Iyar, the 19th day of the Eimer, the Rebbe writes that it's a Jewish custom, it's a minhag Yisrael, not to cut a baby boy's hair until his 3rd birthday. The upshedding of a baby boy is of great importance among Jewish customs. Among minhagim, it is a great minhag. And essentially, the minhag is the educational act, the educational aspect of leaving the payas. It's not so much the not cutting of the hair, as much as cutting the hair and leaving payas when a child is 3 years old. And from the day of the upshel and the leaving of the payas, it is also a minhag to start educating the child, to be machanach the child by accustoming the boy to wear a talis cotton, to begin saying the brachas in the morning, all the brachas, and to bench after eating, and to say the Shema before going to sleep.